The year was 5089. For 3,000 years, humans had lived in complete peace. After the terrible final war of 2089, all countries had joined together under one government called the Earth Unified Government. People no longer fought over land, money, or power. Humans had spread beyond Earth. There were cities on Mars with millions of people. Venus had research centers floating in its clouds. The moons of Jupiter and Saturn had mining operations and small towns. Ships traveled between these places, bringing goods and people back and forth. Commander Olivia Hart stood on the bridge of her ship, the North Star. She was 45 years old with short brown hair and alert blue eyes. Her uniform was white, with blue trim, showing her rank as one of the highest officers in the Earth Space Force. But the Space Force wasn't really a military anymore. It was more like a mix between explorers and police. "Status report," she said, looking at the main screen that showed the stars outside. Lieutenant Alan Miller looked up from his control panel. He was younger than Hart, only 30, with dark skin and a serious face. "All systems running perfectly, Commander. We'll reach the celebration point in about 6 hours." Hart nodded. The celebration was a big deal. 1,000 years had passed since humans had met their first aliens. Now there were 13 different species that had formed something called the Grand Federation of Sentient Species. Each alien race had special skills and knowledge they shared with the others. The Zeblons could control gravity and built amazing structures. The Crixians knew how to cure almost any disease. The Varelli could predict weather patterns on any planet with perfect accuracy. And humans? Humans were good at adapting and creating new things. The other species admired how humans could look at old problems in new ways. Frank Rogers, the communications officer, suddenly sat up straight in his chair. He was a thin man with red hair who rarely got excited. "Commander, I'm picking up strange signals from the edge of our solar system." Hart walked over to his station. "What kind of signals?" "I'm not sure. They don't match any known pattern from Federation ships," Frank said, his fingers moving quickly over his control panel. "And there are a lot of them. Hundreds, maybe thousands." The bridge grew quiet. In 3,000 years of peace, an unknown fleet appearing without warning was something that simply didn't happen. "Put it on the main screen," Hart ordered. The screen changed to show tiny dots of light moving in formation. A computer quickly counted them. 5,742 vessels of various sizes. Alan Miller looked at the screen with wide eyes. "Should we be worried, Commander?" Hart thought for a moment. "Send the standard greeting package on all frequencies. Let's not jump to conclusions." Frank sent the message that had worked with every new species for a millennium: mathematical. Sequences followed by simple images showing peaceful intentions, then translation programs to help establish communication. 20 minutes passed. The bridge crew waited, watching the dots on the screen move slowly but steadily toward the inner solar system. "No response," Frank finally said. Hart frowned. This was unusual. Even the most cautious new species they'd encountered had at least acknowledged the greeting. "Send it again and add a direct request for communication," she ordered. Another 10 minutes passed. "Still nothing, Commander," Frank reported. Hart pressed a button on her chair. "This is Commander Hart. All crew to alert status. This is not a drill." Soft blue lights began to pulse throughout the ship. It had been so long since the alert system had been used for a real situation that some younger crew members had to check their manuals to remember what to do. "Contact Earth Central and the Federation Council," Hart told Frank. "Send them everything we have on the unknown fleet. And Miller, change our course to intercept at a safe distance. Let's get a better look at our visitors." As the North Star changed direction, Hart walked to the back of the bridge where a small conference area was set up. She touched a screen on the wall, bringing up historical records. "Computer, when was the last time unknown ships entered our solar system without responding to communication attempts?" The computer's voice was calm. "The last recorded incident was in year 2087, 2 years before the final war." Alan joined her, looking at the screen. 3,000 years, he said quietly. "We haven't had to deal with anything like this in 3,000 years." Hart nodded. And we don't even have proper warships anymore. The North Star is the closest thing to a military vessel in the entire fleet, and we're really just a diplomatic ship with some extra shields. Do you think they're hostile? Alan asked. Hart watched as the screen showed more details about the approaching ships. They were arranged in a formation that reminded her of pictures she'd seen in history books, a battle formation. I don't know, she answered honestly, but I don't like that they won't talk to us. The ship's doctor, Linda Patel, entered the bridge. She was a small woman with gray hair who had served with Hart for 15 years. I heard the alert, Linda said. Is it serious? Hart gestured to the screen. We have almost 6,000 unknown ships heading our way, and they won't answer our calls. Linda's eyes widened. What do we do? For now, we watch and wait, Hart said. The Federation Council will be meeting within the hour to discuss this. Until then, we're the front line. Frank called from his station. Commander, I'm getting something from the unknown fleet. Hart rushed back to the main area of the bridge. Put it through. A harsh clicking sound filled the bridge. Then it changed, becoming words that sounded flat and mechanical, clearly translated by a computer. Attention, human vessel. You will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in your destruction. We are the Vraxians, and we have come to cleanse this sector of the human pestilence. The bridge was completely silent as the message ended. 3,000 years of peace had just been shattered by a single transmission. Hart took a deep breath and straightened her uniform. Well, she said to her stunned crew, it seems we have a situation. Frank, inform Earth Central that we have made first contact, and it's not going well. 3 days after the Vraxian fleet appeared, representatives from all 13 species of the Grand Federation gathered on the space station called Harmony. The station floated at a neutral point between Earth and Mars, shaped like a giant wheel that turned slowly to create gravity. The meeting room had a round table with 13 seats. The walls showed moving images of stars and planets. Humans had built the station 500 years ago as a place where all species could meet as equals. President Carlos Rivera of the Earth Unified Government sat between the Zeblon and Crixian representatives. He was a tall man with gray hair and a serious face. Though he was 70 years old, medical advances made him look much younger. We have all seen the Vraxian message, Rivera said. They have given us 30 days to surrender all human colonies and retreat to Earth. They say they will allow us to keep Earth if we agree to be supervised by them. The Crixian representative, Dr. Nala, blinked her 4 eyes slowly. Her skin was pale blue and smooth like rubber. This is most unusual, she said in a musical voice. No species has acted with such hostility since before the Federation formed. Next, to her, the Zeblon representative looked like a walking crystal. Zixka's body reflected light in rainbow patterns as he moved. Perhaps we should negotiate, he suggested. The Vraxians might be persuaded to join our Federation rather than attack it. General Henry Williams stood up from his seat beside President Rivera. He was a big man with a shaved head and dark skin. His uniform had fewer decorations than military leaders had worn in ancient times, but everyone knew he was in charge of Earth's defense systems. Negotiations have failed, Williams said. We've sent 27 different messages offering peace talks. The Vraxians respond with the same demand each time. All humans must leave their colonies and return to Earth. Chief Diplomat Susan Miller tapped the table with her finger. She was a middle-aged woman with blonde hair tied back neatly. They've studied our history, she said. In their messages, they talk about the final war and how humans almost destroyed Earth. They call us violent and dangerous. But that was 3,000 years ago, Rivera said. We've changed since then. The Vraxians don't care, Miller replied. They believe we're still the same violent species deep down, and that the Federation has grown weak by including us. The room fell quiet as everyone thought about this. The Vraxians had somehow studied human history without making contact. They had decided humans were too dangerous to exist freely in space. There's something else strange, General Williams said, breaking the silence. The Vraxians have 5,000 ships, which sounds like a lot, but they haven't asked about our military strength at all. They seem to think they can easily defeat us. President Rivera and General Williams looked at each other. Then, to the surprise of the alien representatives, they both started to laugh. The Varelli representative, who looked like a tall insect with 4 arms, tilted his head in confusion. You find this amusing? We faced the first war in 1,000 years and you laugh? Rivera stopped laughing and looked serious again. I'm sorry, he said. It's just that the Vraxians have made a big mistake. They think that because we've had peace for 3,000 years, we've forgotten how to fight. But you have forgotten, haven't you? Asked the Crixian representative. Your military vessels are few, and your weapons are simple. General Williams smiled. What you see is what we show to the galaxy. There's much more that we keep hidden. Back on the North Star, Commander Hart received new orders from Earth. She read them twice to make sure she understood them correctly. They want us to retreat? Lieutenant Miller asked when she told him. We're just going to run away? Hart shook her head. Not exactly. We're moving back to defend the inner system, but there's more happening than what these orders say. Look at this code at the bottom. Phoenix Protocol active. Miller's eyes widened. What does that mean? It means we're waking up, Hart said quietly. For 1,000 years, the Federation has known us as explorers and diplomats. They're about to meet the other side of humanity. Deep beneath the surface of Earth's moon, in caverns that hadn't been opened in centuries, lights began to turn on. Huge doors slowly slid aside, revealing rows of ships that no one in the Federation had ever seen. On Mars, Governor Kelly Reed addressed a crowd of citizens. She stood on a platform in the main dome of Mars City, which covered several square miles and housed 2 million people. For 3,000 years, we've been peaceful, she said into a microphone. We've been scientists and artists, explorers and teachers, but the Vraxians have judged us only by our ancient past. They've decided we're too dangerous to be free. The crowd listened silently. Many looked scared, but others seemed angry. What the Vraxians don't understand, Reed continued, is that peace wasn't something forced on us. Peace was a choice we made every day for 3,000 years, and now they want to take away our right to choose. In secret facilities across the solar system, humans began work on projects that had been theoretical for centuries. Engineers who had designed mining equipment now adjusted their plans to create weapons. Pilots who flew transport ships began training in simulators that taught combat maneuvers. Admiral Jack Nelson stood on the bridge of a ship called the Earth Guardian. Until 3 days ago, the ship had been hidden inside the moon. Now it floated in space, surrounded by hundreds of similar vessels. The Vraxians studied our history, Nelson said to his crew, but they missed something important. We didn't achieve peace because we were weak. We achieved peace because we were strong enough to choose it. The crew nodded. They had all been trained for this moment, even though most had hoped it would never come. Outside the windows of the Earth Guardian, more ships appeared. Some were small and fast, others were huge and heavily armored. Together they formed a fleet that stretched beyond what the eye could see. As the Vraxian ships pushed deeper into the solar system, they sent another message to Earth. Your surrender deadline is approaching. Prepare to be conquered. But humanity wasn't preparing to surrender. They were remembering something they had put aside long ago, how to fight back. The Vraxian fleet moved slowly through the outer solar system. They passed the planet Neptune with its deep blue color. They moved past Uranus and its sideways rings. Their 5,000 ships stayed in tight formation, ready for battle. Supreme, war leader Vex Thule stood on the bridge of his command ship, the Conqueror. He was 7 feet tall with green scales that shimmered in the light. His 6 eyes could see in different directions at once. Like all Vraxians, he had 4 arms and sharp teeth. Status report, Vex Thule ordered. His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Zrak, bowed slightly. We will reach the asteroid belt in 6 hours, Supreme War Leader. No resistance has been detected so far. Vex Thule made a clicking sound that showed he was pleased. As expected, our research indicates that humans have not fought a real war in 3,000 years. They have grown soft. On a large screen, he watched as images of Earth appeared. The blue planet looked peaceful, with white clouds swirling over blue oceans and green land. Such a lovely world, Vex Thul said. It will make a fine addition to the Vraxian Empire once we remove the human problem. Zorak looked at another screen showing data about human ships. Their vessels are mainly for transport and exploration. They have some defensive capabilities, but nothing that could stand against our warships. And their Federation friends? Vex Thul asked. The other species have expressed concern but have not moved to help the humans yet. They also have limited military power. The Federation has been peaceful for too long. Vex Thul clicked his teeth together. Peace makes species weak. The humans were once warriors, but they have forgotten their nature. We are doing the galaxy a favor by removing them before they remember. As the Vraxian fleet approached the asteroid belt that lay between Mars and Jupiter, their sensors detected no ships or weapons. It seemed the path to the inner planets was clear. Earth's surrender deadline was still 2 weeks away, but the Vraxians were confident they would win easily if humans decided to fight. What they didn't know was that they were being watched very carefully. Hidden among the asteroids, special human ships with advanced stealth technology tracked every move the Vraxians made. These ships, called Shadows, were completely black and absorbed all signals that hit them. They were invisible to normal sensors. On board one Shadow ship, Captain Olivia Shaw watched the Vraxian fleet through special cameras. She was 35, with short black hair and dark eyes that missed nothing. They really think we're defenseless, she said to her crew. They haven't even sent scout ships ahead to check for traps. Her weapons officer, Ben Price, nodded. Their formation is tight too. If we hit them with area weapons, we could take out multiple ships at once. Shaw shook her head. No, we follow the plan. Admiral Nelson wants them to reach the designated point before we reveal ourselves. Throughout the solar system, humans were finishing their preparations. The Phoenix Protocol, named after the mythical bird that rose from ashes, was nearly complete. On Mars, engineers tested new shield systems that could protect the domed cities. On Venus, research teams activated gravity weapons that had been theoretical projects until now. On Earth's moon, the last hidden ships emerged from underground bases. Admiral Nelson stood on the bridge of the Earth Guardian, watching a holographic display of the solar system. Red dots showed the position of Vraxian ships. Blue dots showed human forces. All units report ready, Admiral, said his communications officer. Lisa Chen. Nelson nodded. He was 60 years old with a weathered face and gray hair cut short. His blue uniform had only a small pin showing his rank, a star with Earth in the center. Send the message to all commanders, Nelson ordered. Operation Remember begins in 3 hours. As the Vraxian fleet pushed through the asteroid belt, they remained unaware of what waited for them. Their sensors showed empty space ahead, with only a few human transport ships fleeing toward Earth. On the Harmony space station, representatives from the Federation watched the approaching conflict with growing concern. Most had believed humans when they said they had a plan, but seeing the size of the Vraxian fleet made many doubt. Perhaps we should offer to mediate, suggested the Crixian representative. There might still be a chance to avoid bloodshed. President Rivera smiled politely. We appreciate your concern, but everything is under control. I suggest you watch what happens next. It will be educational. At the edge of the asteroid belt, the Vraxian fleet regrouped for the final approach to Mars. Supreme War Leader Vex Thul prepared to send another message to Earth demanding surrender. That's when everything changed. Throughout the asteroid belt, hundreds of hidden weapons platforms suddenly activated. They had been disguised as normal asteroids for centuries, part of Earth's long-forgotten defense system. At the same time, the human fleet appeared seemingly from nowhere. The stealth technology that hid their ships switched off, revealing over 1,000 vessels of various sizes. On the bridge of the Conqueror, alarms sounded as sensors finally detected the human ships. Impossible! Vex Thul shouted. Where did they come from? Sub-Commander Zorak frantically checked the sensor readings. They appear to have some kind of advanced stealth technology. Our sensors couldn't detect them until now. How many ships? Vexthul demanded. Zrak hesitated before answering. Current count is over 1,200, and rising. Vexthul's 6 eyes blinked rapidly. That's not possible. Our intelligence said they had no more than 200 ships in their entire fleet. It seems our intelligence was wrong, Zrak replied quietly. On the Earth Guardian, Admiral Nelson gave the order. All ships move to surround the Vraxian fleet. Weapons platforms stand by. Remember, we want to minimize casualties. Our goal is to force surrender, not destruction. The human fleet moved with perfect coordination. Smaller, faster ships darted between the Vraxian vessels. Larger ships positioned themselves at strategic points to cut off any retreat. In just 30 minutes, the Vraxian fleet found itself completely surrounded. Their tight formation, designed for attack, had become a trap. They were packed so closely together that they couldn't maneuver without risking collision with their own ships. Commander Hart, now in charge of a squadron of fast attack vessels, watched from her new ship as the trap closed. They really thought we'd forgotten how to fight, she said to Lieutenant Miller, who had joined her crew. Miller nodded. 3,000 years is a long time, but some things you never forget. Admiral Nelson opened a communication channel to the Vraxian flagship. On his screen appeared the scaled face of Supreme War Leader Vexthul. This is Admiral Jack Nelson of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are surrounded and outgunned. Power down. Your weapons and prepare to discuss terms of surrender. Vexthul hissed angrily. This is some trick. You cannot have this many ships. Humans have been peaceful for too long. Nelson allowed himself a small smile. Being peaceful was our choice, War Leader. It was never because we couldn't fight. You have 1 hour to surrender, or we will be forced to demonstrate exactly what humans remember about war. As the communication ended, Nelson turned to his officers. Let's hope they make the right choice. We've had enough peace to know it's worth fighting for. Supreme War Leader Vexthul paced on the bridge of the Conqueror. His green scales had turned darker with stress. All 6 of his eyes focused on the main screen showing the human ships surrounding his fleet. It must be an illusion, he insisted. Humans cannot have this many warships. They have been peaceful for 3,000 years. Sub-Commander Zrak studied the sensor readings carefully. The ships are real, Supreme War Leader. And their weapons, they are unlike anything in our database. What kind of weapons? Vexthul demanded. Zrak looked worried as he replied. Many seem to be modified mining equipment and terraforming tools. They were not built as weapons, but they can function as such. Our shields may not stop them because they operate on different principles than traditional weapons. Vexthul slammed his fist on a control panel. How could our intelligence be so wrong? We were told humans had forgotten the art of war. Perhaps they didn't forget, Zrak suggested quietly. Perhaps they simply chose not to use it. The 1-hour deadline was almost up. Throughout the Vraxian fleet, ship captains waited nervously for orders. Should they attack and try to break through the human blockade? Or should they surrender and face the shame of defeat? On the Earth Guardian, Admiral Nelson watched the time counting down on a display. Any response from the Vraxians? He asked. Communications. Officer Lisa Chen shook her head. Nothing yet, Admiral. Nelson sighed. Prepare for the demonstration then. Target the empty space 1,000 kilometers ahead of the Vraxian flagship. We'll show them what we can do without actually harming any of their ships. Throughout the human fleet, special weapons powered up. They weren't designed to destroy but to demonstrate power in a way the Vraxians would understand. Just as the deadline expired, Nelson gave the order. Execute demonstration. From 50 different human ships, beams of energy shot forward. They all met at a single point in empty space in front of the Vraxian flagship. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, a small sun appeared. The energy had been so concentrated that it created a temporary star. It burned brightly for 30 seconds before collapsing in on itself and disappearing. On the Conqueror, alarms sounded as sensors overloaded from the energy readings. The bridge crew stared in shock at where the artificial star had been. That amount of energy, Zrak whispered. If they had directed it at our fleet, Vex Thule understood the message. The humans could have destroyed his entire fleet with that single attack. Instead, they had shown mercy. Nelson opened the communication channel again. Supreme War Leader, that was a small demonstration of one weapon system. We have others. We do not wish to use them on your ships or your people. Will you now discuss surrender terms? There was a long silence before Vex Thule responded. The Vraxian Empire does not surrender. Nelson nodded. I understand pride, War Leader. So let me offer an alternative. Not surrender, but a truce. Power down your weapons, and we will escort your fleet to a neutral location where we can discuss joining the Federation instead of attacking it. On the Conqueror, Vex Thule turned to his officers. Opinions? We cannot win this battle, Zarak said firmly. The humans have superior technology and numbers, and they are showing restraint. They could have destroyed us already. Another officer, the Vraxian tactical expert, agreed. Our studies of human history showed they were once brutal warriors. It seems they have not lost those skills, only chosen when to use them. Vex Thule thought for a long moment. 3,000 years of peace had not made humans weak as he had believed. Instead, it had given them time to perfect both peace and war. Very well, he finally said. Tell Admiral Nelson we accept his terms. We will power down weapons and follow their ships to a neutral location. Throughout the solar system, humans watched on screens as the Vraxian fleet powered down their weapons. The first conflict in 3,000 years was ending without a single shot fired in anger. On Mars, Governor Kelly Reed addressed the colonists again. The Vraxians have agreed to talks. Our demonstration of strength combined with our offer of peace convinced them to reconsider their attack. The people cheered. They had prepared for war but were getting peace instead. On the Harmony space station, the alien representatives of the Federation watched in amazement as the human fleet escorted the Vraxian ships toward Jupiter's moon Europa, which had been chosen as the meeting place. I don't understand, said the Zeblon representative, his crystal body reflecting his confusion. Humans had this military power all along. Why did they hide it from the Federation? President Rivera smiled. We didn't hide it. We simply didn't flaunt it. The purpose of the Federation is peace, not comparing military strength. The Crixian representative blinked her 4 eyes. But why maintain such weapons if you truly wanted peace? Because we learned from our history, Rivera explained. 3,000 years ago, humans nearly destroyed themselves because they weren't ready for peace. We needed to be sure we could protect what we had built. Professor Paul Bennett joined the conversation. He was a tall, thin man with white hair who led Earth Science Academy. Many of what you saw weren't weapons at all, he said. They were tools designed for mining asteroids, terraforming planets, and studying space phenomena. We simply applied them differently when needed. The alien representatives looked at each other with new understanding. Humans hadn't forgotten their warrior past. They had transformed it into something more valuable, the ability to defend peace without seeking war. On Europa, the ice-covered moon of Jupiter, a meeting facility had been quickly prepared. Admiral Nelson and War Leader Vex Thule sat across from each other at a simple table. I still don't understand, Vex Thule said. Our studies showed that humans were once the most violent species in this sector of the galaxy. You fought endless wars among yourselves. How did you change so completely? Nelson considered the question carefully. We didn't change completely. That's what you missed. We're still the same species that fought those wars. We still have the capacity for violence. But we learned something important from our near destruction, that having the ability to fight doesn't mean you must use it. But you maintained your military power in secret, Vex Thule pointed out. Not secret, Nelson corrected. Just quiet. We developed our technology for peaceful purposes. Mining, exploration, science. The fact that these technologies could be used defensively was a secondary consideration. We hoped we would never need to demonstrate that fact. Vex Thule's scales shifted color slightly as he processed this information. The Vraxian Empire has much to learn from humans, it seems. Nelson nodded. And the Federation has much to learn from the Vraxians. Your caution about species with violent histories is not unreasonable. Perhaps you can help us develop better safeguards. As the meeting continued, a message arrived from Earth. The Federation Council had voted unanimously to offer the Vraxians membership as the 14th species. The shortest war in human history was over before it truly began. And humanity had shown that 3,000 years of peace hadn't made them forget how to fight. It had taught them when not to. 1 month after what people now called the 6-Hour War, a grand ceremony took place on the Harmony space station. The huge main hall was decorated with the flags of all 13 Federation species. Now, a 14th flag was being added. The dark green banner of the Vraxians. Supreme War Leader Vex Thul had a new title now, Ambassador Vex Thul. He stood tall in formal robes instead of battle armor. The green scales on his face had a healthy shine, and his 6 eyes looked around the room with curiosity instead of hostility. President Carlos Rivera of Earth shook hands with Vex Thul in the human tradition of friendship. The gesture had been practiced many times as Vraxians were not used to touching other species. "Welcome to the Grand Federation," Rivera said warmly. Vex Thul bowed slightly. "We are honored to join. The Vraxian people have much to learn about cooperation instead of conquest." The other alien representatives formed a circle around them. The Zeblons with their crystal bodies, the blue-skinned Crixians, the insect-like Vorelli, and all the other species watched as the Vraxian flag rose to join theirs. Commander Olivia Hart stood at attention in her white uniform. She had been promoted for her role in the first contact with the Vraxians. Next to her, Lieutenant Alan Miller, also promoted, watched with pride. "Did you ever think it would end this way?" Miller asked quietly. Hart shook her head. "When they first showed up demanding surrender? No, but I'm glad it did." After the ceremony, leaders from all 14 species met in the council chamber. They sat at the round table, now expanded to include the Vraxian seat. Vex Thul spoke to the council. "My people have a question that still troubles us. You had the power to destroy our fleet completely. Why did you show mercy instead?" "President." Rivera looked to Admiral Nelson, who stood by the wall. The admiral stepped forward to answer. "Because destruction is easy," Nelson said simply. "Peace is harder. For 3,000 years, humans have chosen the harder path. We weren't going to abandon it just because we were challenged." The Crixian representative, Dr. Nala, raised a slender blue hand. "But humans maintained weapons all this time. How does that fit with your commitment to peace?" Professor Paul Bennett answered this question. He adjusted his glasses and spoke clearly so everyone could understand. "What you call weapons were actually tools," he explained. "The energy beams that created the small star, they were designed for terraforming planets. The shield technology, developed to protect mining operations from space debris. The stealth systems, created to study space phenomena without interference." He paused before continuing. "The point is, technology itself isn't peaceful or violent. It's how you use it that matters." Ambassador Vex Thul nodded slowly. "We have much to learn from this philosophy. The Vraxian Empire has always developed technology for conquest first. Perhaps this is why we have fallen behind in other areas." The meeting continued as they discussed how the Vraxians would integrate into the Federation. They had unique biological technologies to share, and strong defensive systems that could help protect all species from any future threats. Meanwhile, on Earth, Mars, and the other human colonies, people were returning to normal life. The ships that had appeared so suddenly were disappearing again, some back into hidden bases, others converting back to their peaceful purposes. Governor Kelly Reed walked through the main dome of Mars City with a group of Vraxian visitors. The aliens looked around in wonder at the gardens and lakes that humans had built on the red planet. "Your people turned a dead world into this paradise," said the lead Vraxian scientist. "We always thought terraforming was just a myth." Reed smiled. "It took hundreds of years, the same patience that helped us maintain peace for 3,000 years. On the North Star, Commander Hart was preparing her ship for a new mission. The diplomatic vessel would take a group of human and Vraxian scientists to explore a newly discovered star system. Frank Rogers, her communications officer, brought her a message. "Latest update from Admiral Nelson," he said. "The last of the Vraxian fleet has been escorted to their home system. Their war council has been dissolved and replaced with a science council." Hart read the message with satisfaction. So the Vraxians are really embracing change. "It's strange," Rogers said. "A month ago they were coming to conquer us. Now they're our newest allies." Hart nodded. "Sometimes showing strength isn't about fighting. It's about knowing when not to fight." 1 year later, the original Federation celebration that had been interrupted by the Vraxian arrival finally took place. The huge event marked 1,001 years since the formation of the Grand Federation. Now 14 flags hung in the Great Hall on Harmony Station. Representatives from all species mingled, sharing stories and knowledge. Human and Vraxian children performed, a play together showing how former enemies could become friends. Admiral Nelson stood with Vex Thule, watching the celebration. The Vraxian had changed in the past year. He seemed more relaxed, less rigid in his movements. "I have a confession," Vex Thule said quietly. "When we first came to your system, I truly believed we were doing the right thing. Our historical research showed humans as dangerous warriors who nearly destroyed themselves. We thought you were a threat waiting to happen." Nelson nodded. "Your research wasn't wrong about our past, but you missed something important about our present." "Yes," Vex Thule agreed. "We saw that you had been peaceful for 3,000 years, but we thought it was because you had forgotten how to fight. We didn't understand that peace was your choice, not your weakness." "A choice we make every day," Nelson said. "The capacity for violence is still there in every human, but so is the capacity for creation, for beauty, for friendship. We simply decided which parts of our nature to nurture." President Rivera joined them, along with leaders from the other species. "The Federation has grown stronger this year," he said. "Not despite the challenge we faced, but because of it." The Zeblon representative's crystal body sparkled as he spoke. "We have learned an important lesson from humans. Peace is not the absence of strength. Sometimes it requires the greatest strength of all." Vex Thule looked out at the celebration at humans and Vraxians talking and laughing together. "When we came to conquer Earth, humans laughed at our threats. Now I understand why. You weren't mocking us. You were confident in your ability to defend yourselves without destroying us." Rivera smiled. "The best victory is the one where everyone wins. You get a place in the Federation, sharing knowledge and resources. We get a new friend and ally, and the Federation becomes stronger with your addition." As the celebration continued into the night, Commander Hart wrote in her personal journal, "1 year ago, aliens shattered 3,000 years of peace to attack humanity, and humans only laughed. Not because we didn't take the threat seriously, but because we knew something the Vraxians didn't. Peace isn't the opposite of strength. True peace comes from having the strength to defend it, the wisdom to value it, and the courage to maintain it, even in the face of those who don't understand it yet."